Ladies and gentlemen, are we facing the end of democracy? If we look around in our world, then this concern seems justified. Autocrats in many parts of the world, they are on the rise. Former democratic lightning towers like the USA, they seem to radically turn away, and traditional democracies like in Europe, they look very old and sclerotic on the world stage. So the danger for democracy definitely is justified, especially when we look at the grand cycles of astrology and if we look at the grand cycles of history. So in this video, I would like to make a view out of the bird's perspective on democracy. I would like to name all the problems that we face here in order to create solutions for a future-oriented version of democracy. A version of democracy that is appropriate for this very fast changing and volatile air age that we are going into now. Before we start, a short disclaimer. This video necessarily contains my Eurocentristic perspective on political systems and on democracy. And in our current times, where we have all this global unity in danger, it's so important that we have international exchange on this topic. So please write down in the comments how you look onto democracy, on the best political systems. Please also write down if you agree, if you don't agree with anything. It's so important that we now internationally exchange to keep our big friendship, our bond of humanity among each other. Yeah, if we look around in the world, it seems that autocrats are completely on the rise, especially in all those global players, in all those rising economies of the 21st century. Most of all, China, for example, they show us already for years how you can unite autocratic systems with a perfect market economy, so which seemed to be a contradiction in former decades, but now we see, oh, maybe this is much more powerful than the combination of democracy and market capitalism. Also countries such as the Arabian states such as India, for example, they all are far away from being democratic. If you look at countries like Russia, of course, out of question, same thing. And but now what is quite new, if you look at the USA, of course, there are people who already said for years that USA is just the camouflage of a democracy, but now with Donald Trump, they also officially turn away. They rule by decree, they rule just by order, and they don't care about all these democratic institutions anymore. But if you also look into Europe, for example, the European Union, on the surveys, they are democratic, but if we look below these surveys, then we have to realize the European Commission, the European Council, they are not directly elected by the people, but in the end they are the only ones who can make new laws. And in the past there have been so many stories where we could see how deep lobbyism is influencing even the big decision makers in the European Union. And especially during Corona, many people stated that the European Union is just something like a democratorship, a demokratur. There's not really a good combination in English, but it's the combination which is between democracy and dictatorship, in many countries. In Germany, we are very proud on being democracies, but also here, if we look below the surveys, we see now for the very first time the parties of the self-called center, they don't have a two-third majority anymore, and the extremists on the left and on the right-hand side, they are getting stronger and stronger, because the core of democracy has become dysfunctional even in Central Europe, and now they are going to build up a firewall against extremists, which means that they want to exclude 1/3 of people from the elections from all the democratic processes, and even try now to forbid the biggest opposition party in Germany. So we see democracy really is in a deep crisis. And in the past, we always thought democracy and capitalism, this is the perfect match for prosperity and for the wealth of anybody. Yeah, but now we see this is not a natural law. There are autocratic systems that seem to be far more successful in the beginning air age in creating prosperity and wealth for the people. So even in established democracies, people more and more turn away. Yeah, there's a saying from Bertolt Brecht: first comes the lunch and then comes moral. So if autocracies support more your self-interest, then many people, for them it's no problem to turn away from democracies. So at the moment, some people are questioning if probably democracy is nothing else than just a small footnote in history. Because if we look in the past centuries, in the past millennia, then democracies for most cultures, for most people, for most philosophers, was nothing else than just something strange that the old Greeks tried many, many centuries ago, but it didn't work quite well. And so monarchy, so royalty is much more superior to democracy. Yeah, this is what, let's say, around 95% of people in the different cultures, in the different ages, thought. And for example, if we look back, Johannes Kepler, the great astronomer and also great astrologer, he wrote a book in 1619, 400 years ago, on the world harmonics. And there he also had a mathematical proof that democracy is inferior to other political systems. And he wrote there, democracy he compared to the arithmetic proportions, and he wrote about it, democracy does not distinguish between noble and mean, between rich and poor, well-earned and unearned, capable and vicious, clever and stupid. Instead, royalty or the monarchy he compared to the geometric proportions, and the king, he executes all that distributive and commutative justice demands. In doing so, the king relates all his decisions to the whole body of the state and its welfare, to concord and cohesion. So we see here with this big security, where we nowadays think democracy is superior to any other political system. In the past, it was completely the opposite. Another groundbreaking work has been published 100 years ago in 1918, Oswald Spengler with his Decline of the West. This is the major translation into English, Der Untergang des Abendlandes. Maybe you could translate it much better by The Downfall of the Occident. And he made an historical analysis of all the high cultures in human history. He looked at them, he looked at the Indian high culture, he looked at the Chinese high culture, he looked at the classical high culture, which was extremely revealing, the antique culture of the Greeks and the Romans, and he compared it to our Occidental culture. And there he detected that high cultures, like living beings, they follow cycles. They are born at a certain period of time. Then the spring starts, their childhood, the cultural spirit begins to explore the world. Then the culture enters summer, enters its youth, it becomes big and strong and blooms and begins to influence the world immensely. Then, after a couple of centuries, this goes into the autumn of the culture. It goes into matureness, and there we see the last grand works, of this cultural spirit. And in the end, the culture sinks into winter, sinks into its old age, where it's very old and sclerotic and cannot move anymore. Everything is ossified, and then the culture declines. Then the culture goes into a materialistic approach of civilization. And our Occidental culture, which is Europe, which is the USA, which is also all the other rest of the world that took over this culture, he said this is the urge of Faust to reach for the horizon. And this culture started around the year 900 with the pre-forms of Romantic and Gothic. Then it came into summer around the year 1500, which was the beginning of what we now call the new times, the present times, which started with the Renaissance and then Baroque. There we had this high blooming of the Occidental culture. Around 1800, it entered autumn, with the rise of Napoleon, with the rise of the first democracies. And then he predicted that around the year 2000, our Occidental culture will enter the stage of winter. And then democracies, they slip over into Caesarism. And what is Caesarism? He said when people start to introduce democracies, which was in most countries around 100 years ago, then this works for a couple of decades quite well. People, they participate in decisions, but the longer it takes, the more these democracies change from a rulership, from an authority, from a dominion of the people into a rulership of money. Then economy takes over all the power, and in the end, who has the money can also influence people, can manipulate people, and can manipulate votes. And so in the end, this democracy more and more just gets a hollow, a shallow form without content. And in the end, people are really sick of democracies. They say it's just an endless babbling and brabbling and discussion, and nothing goes forwards anymore, nothing is decided anymore. And so the call for a strong leader gets stronger and stronger. And then he predicted around the year after the year 2000, we will face a new epoch, a new era of strong leaders. He called it Caesarism. Strong Caesars, strong kings, they rise, they are popular, they are populists, they know how to manipulate the votes of the people, and so they get into power and they switch off democratic institutions more and more. And on the surface, it's still a democracy, but in the background, it's the age of Caesarism, the age of strong leaders. And if we look at this really revealing prediction of Oswald Spengler for the 21st century, then it's so astonishing. If we look at Donald Trump, who is the prototype for Caesarism, who is doing exactly what Spengler predicted 100 years ago. And on the other side, we also know that major strategic consultants in the White House, such as Steve Bannon, they are really very deep into these cycle theories. They are also very profound in all what Oswald Spengler, for example, published. And so in the end, it's the question, is Donald Trump, is this new Caesarism approaching, is it on the rise? Because it's just a natural law of the course of high cultures? Or is it a self-fulfilling prophecies? Because their strategic consultants think that we are approaching the age of Caesarism. He is changing into Caesarism, and so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We don't know, but in the end, it's really so astonishing reading Oswald Spengler's Decline of the West, reading Oswald Spengler's Downfall of the Occident, now 100 years later, and see all these details that really have come into reality in our 21st century. Yeah, the next very revealing concept I introduced in 2018 into discussion, and it's the concept of structocracies. Structocracy is not a rulership by kings or by monarchs or by politicians, but it's a rulership, a dominion by giant technocratic structures. Yeah, so these structocracies, they are just possible now as our lives are transferred more and more into digital space, into algorithms, artificial intelligence, digital surveillance, and also controlling. Yeah, if you would like to know more about structocracies, please check my new future dossier, the megatrends of the air age 2020 to 2030, because there I describe the structocracies and all its implications in depth. Now I just want to focus on the political side of this. Yeah, so in the end, not monarchs or politicians or policemen or warlords are ruling us. No, algorithms are ruling us. In autocratic systems like China, for example, it's public algorithms. And in so-called free economies like in the USA or like in Europe, it's most of all algorithms of mega companies, yeah, which in the end doesn't make any difference. And these structocracies, they use economy of scales. So they are per se anti-democratic because, first of all, only the biggest and the best, they can develop such structocracies. Only they can develop artificial intelligences, and the best of them, they take all of, let's say, the public interest, and the other ones, the fifth or the 10th, they get nothing, so the winner takes it all in the end. Then these structocracies, they are per se intransparent because they are so hyper complex. Even the best technicians, the top experts of these mega companies, they don't know in detail how these algorithms work and how they steer us, how they put together their information and what priorities they set. Yeah, and of course they also can be manipulated very easily. Yeah, they are alternative less. So content, ideologies, thoughts that are unwelcomed by these systems, they are just turned off. So their reach is just switched down to zero, and so nobody knows about them. Yeah, like Arthur Schopenhauer said, we can do what we will, but we cannot want what we will anymore. So the discourse, let's say the freedom of speech, it gets completely narrowed down. We get into monocultures of human thinking and into monocultures of human behavior. And we get a very strong polarization because the more you polarize, the more people are interested. So we only have black and white, good and bad, but all these spheres in between, they just get invisible. And who are the new kings? Who are the new politicians of these structocracies? The tech oligarchs that also gathered at the inauguration of Donald Trump. Yeah, the ultra-libertarians who say we don't need any state anymore, we don't want borders, we don't want limits. Let's just unleash freedom among mankind. And they are so afraid of China because they say, we must really get rid of democracies, otherwise we won't have any chance against China. But what they don't say, they just always talk about freedom, but in the end it's just their freedom, it's not our freedom. And the more their freedom is increasing, the more our unfreedom is increasing. So that's the major problem of this. So you see, we have a couple of very good explanations why democracies are not working anymore in the 21st century, why they have become dysfunctional. And in the next video, I am going to explain the future of democracies. Yeah, we will make an in-depth problem analysis of what is not working in democracies and how we can solve these problems. Yeah, because our target is not to get into autocratic system. Our target as people, as mankind, should be to get into a pluralistic system where any life has value. And so I'm going also to propose a couple of solutions how we can save, how we can renovate democracy for the 21st century, how we can renovate democracies for the new air age. So please write down your comments, write down your thoughts. It's so important that now we are uniting our thoughts internationally, globally. Please also spread it with your friends and with your families. And I'm looking forward for all that you write about it. And yeah, I hope you will see again in the next video on the future of democracy. Thank you so much.